3 books on pottery. They're all manuals. The Potter's Book, the Potter's Manual, and The Craft of the Potter. The first one's by Bernard Leach, and it's pretty early sort of example of 1940, look, first published. This one is from the 80s, and this one from the 70s. Now this one is a nice book by the BBC, who commissioned Michael Casson, this guy here, to make a series of programs on studio pottery. It's sort of how-to programs, really, and the book is a kind of summary of those programs, and it covers quite a lot, and you know, tells you quite a bit, not in massive detail, but it's quite helpful. And there's a few glaze recipes and examples of other people's work. That's an example of Michael Casson's work. He's a great thrower. He's one of the best of that era. And if you find any of his work, I would say highly collectible. And I don't think there'll be anybody copying it, because very few people would have the skill to do it. And he was a master on the wheel. Really, really good potter. Made these lovely strong shapes, and I think you know, slightly underrated, really, in comparison to some other people. But there it is. It's a nice book, and if you find it, it's worth having. Craft of the Potter, Michael Casson. This one. This is an excellent manual, and it's by Kenneth Clark, and can't really read it there. That's that Kenneth Clark, and I think this is a book in which it's possible to find a solution to most of the problems you're likely to encounter in studio pottery. And this guy was a technocrat and an artist. He really knew his trade, and it's comprehensive. Almost everything is in it. I can't really think of any area in which it's lacking. So I would recommend this book highly. I think Kenneth Clark was an amazing guy in the field of ceramics. He's very influential, and I think a lot of the industrial potteries would have picked up on his work and design influence. Was very positive, and you know, and very helpful to the industry generally. There's lots of examples of other people's work in here as well. He's very good actually at looking at the way in which other people use clay, but it's fantastic. It's stuff on throwing and turning and coiling and slabbing and clay preparation, glazes, you name it. It's all in there. It's all in. Brilliant book, and absolutely brilliant. And I'll give you the ISBN number in case you want to find a copy. I don't know whether this is it's 0356 153 916, and it was MacDonald and Orbis, I think. Yeah, a MacDonald and Orbis book, first published 1983. Highly recommended. This one is mostly about Bernard Leach and his work, and contains a lot of information and drawings and glaze recipes, and this is designed for a tea set by the author, and it's got a great deal of information about how he made his pottery, and fired it, and so on and so forth. And he was very influenced by his trips to Japan in particular, and he made friends with Oriental Japanese potters, and brought a lot of their ideas back to England, and was really responsible for a rise in the interest of Oriental ceramics. Now, I'm not saying that there's never been any interest in Oriental ceramics before Bernard Leach, because here's a mug that my stepfather used to use, that was probably produced sometime in the wake of the Industrial Revolution, when ideas and patterns were imported from the Far East and proved to be really popular in this country. So we have had Oriental ideas before Bernard Leach, so he can't exactly be blamed for extinguishing the slipware potteries of rural England. I think that's a bit unfair. I think fashion often comes into play here, and it can have a detrimental and a beneficial influence on industry that's already established in a place. That's a different question. The story I want to tell you about this book starts at a prison in the north of England and ends in a courtroom at the Old Bailey in London. Now, the inmates of a certain prison in northern England were treated to pottery classes by a very nice, very responsible, hard-working young lady who used Bernard Leach's book as a manual in their pottery classes, and she was justifiably gratified by the enthusiasm, industry, and commitment that the inmates who were lucky enough to go to her classes showed in pursuing their newfound skills in pottery, largely thanks to her and thanks to this book by Bernard Leach. Now, the book does, as I say, contain a good deal of practical information on how to make pots, but particularly how to make pots that, well, that's a Shoji Hamada pot, but here's a Bernard Leach pot. Not hard to make if you've got a little bit of experience in pottery. Quite straightforward, really. And the glaze recipe would be in the book. And I think these guys, encompassed all of the necessary knowledge found in the book to produce some pretty good facsimiles of Bernard Leach pots. And the pots, many of the pots found their way out of the prison environment and into the art world in London. And now, how quite they found their way out of the jail and into the sale rooms is probably documented elsewhere. You won't find that information in this book, but that's what happened. These pots were very well copied, and they found their way into sale rooms in London, where they subsequently were auctioned at quite high prices, because he's very collectible as a significant figure in the studio pottery world. Anyway, I don't think there was any blame attached to the teacher. I'm sure there wasn't. I think she was doing the best job she could and she did it very well, and so did her students by all accounts, even though some slightly snotty art critics did subsequently say, oh well, it wasn't hard to spot that these were crude forgeries. I think it might have been quite hard to spot. I don't see why not. I've never found anything in Bernard Leach's work particularly sophisticated. He was just the first person back in this country to practice this kind of stoneware pottery. Since then, hundreds, if not thousands, of people have been doing it, and probably doing it better. And after all, you know, if you master a craft, there's nothing to stop you from copying somebody else's work. The salient point here is that Bernard Leach was the first, or amongst the first, to introduce these, let's say, rural Oriental skills into England. And he opened a pottery in St Ives, and a lot of people went to study with him and work with him, and other potters opened places around England and took on students and apprentices who wanted to learn the craft, and they in turn spread the gospel on Oriental stoneware out and about the place quite widely, and I think we were all sort of taken by it. I know when I went to college, everything was about stoneware, reduction firing, celadons, mashiko, khakis, all that Oriental stuff that Hamada and Leach had brought back from Japan to the UK. Anyway, I think we have had one or two incidents of other people's work being copied in the art world, haven't we? Some more famously than others, but this did make a bit of a stir at the time, and I thought it was quite a funny story, and pleased to have shared it with you. I might have got some of the details a bit wrong, but I've tried to leave details out of it because they're not important. Coming back to the books, get a copy of this if you're into pottery. This is great. It's great. It's great. You're really, and it's well written, and it's good to read. And if you want to see something on YouTube, you could try and find Michael Casson's BBC series. I think it was called The Craft of the Potter. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. So you might find that on YouTube still, a bit grainy, I think, but nonetheless, if you're into that, you may find it there. Anyway, listen guys, like and subscribe to the channel if you would. It'd be doing us a big favour, and we hope you'll join us on the next one.